Kia ora koutou katoa, ko John Reid Takuingoa. Welcome to this edition of Water New Zealand's podcast series, Tawara o Te Wai. I'm John Reid from Water New Zealand. Today we're going to talk about cybersecurity, why we should be aware of it and how it might impact the water industry in Aotearoa. We're joined today by two guests, Jennie Vickers and Mike Jagusch. Jennie is an audit manager, lawyer and director with a passion for helping people and organisations to do good business while staying cyber safe and not be cyber scared. Mike is director, Mission Enablement at the National Cybersecurity Centre. In his time at the NCSC, Mike has worked in customer engagement, providing organisations with security advice and guidance, and has been involved in the more sort of hands-on aspects of cybersecurity. Mike's teams lead NCSC's work on strategy development, business delivery, communications and engagement. We're very pleased to have both Jennie and Mike with us on the podcast today. Kia ora, Jennie, Mike and Hannah.
Kia ora, John.
Kia ora, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Kia ora, great to be here.
So thanks for joining us today. Hannah, over to you.
Thanks, John. Jennie and Mike, it's fantastic to have you here in such an important topic that we sometimes, I guess, don't think about in probably the broader context. So, Mike, could you start us off with, the fact that we're all aware of, spam and emails, and that's what we talk about often when we talk about cybersecurity. But actually, could you give us a bit of a breakdown? What is cybersecurity and why is it actually important?
Simply, we all basically live online now. All of our business is done online. And normally, when we think about cybersecurity, it's really about protecting the people and the computers and the information on those computers. We normally are focused on protecting what we call the confidentiality, so making sure that only the people you want to have access to information have that access. The integrity, making sure that information is trustworthy, and the availability, making sure those systems and information is accessible when it needs to be. So when you're doing those three things, that's all grouped under cybersecurity. What I like about cybersecurity, to be honest, is that it's important for everyday people in our own online lives. You could lose money, or there's emotional harms if your cybersecurity goes wrong. But then it's also really important for organizations who being cyber secure helps them operate and helps them maintain trust with their customers. And then it's also becoming an increasing part of our nation's national security. So it's important that our organizations who deliver services to New Zealanders are cyber secure, because people rely on those services being available in their everyday lives.
So Mike, what is the NCSC's role in cyber in New Zealand, and what do you see changing in the future?
Yeah, so the National Cybersecurity Centre is sort of in the name. So we look to improve cybersecurity nationally. We're part of the Government Communications Security Bureau, so part of the intelligence community. And, that's really important because that helps give us insight into threats or trends internationally that we can use to inform what we're doing here in Aotearoa. We've traditionally focused on cybersecurity for large organisations, so critical infrastructure, the public sector, key economic generators, so on and so forth. But last year, we begun our process integrating with an organisation known as CERT New Zealand, who were part of a different agency. And what that means now is that we work all across the spectrum, so providing advice to everyday people, small, medium businesses, all the way up to critical infrastructure and public sector. And really what we are all about is we have a decent understanding of what's happening domestically about in the threat space, but also what we're seeing work well for people or organisations in protecting themselves. And so our role is really about taking all of that information and then making it available for people so that they can make the best decisions they can about where to spend their cybersecurity time.
Jennie, I guess from a water perspective, because I know you did a fantastic talk at Water New Zealand a couple of years ago, can you help us to understand how this might actually be important within or where the threats might come within the New Zealand water sector?
it was quite a revelation when I spoke in 2022 at the conference as to how much on the journey of maturity so many of the organizations were. So, cyber hadn't been spoken about enough to engineers, to people across the board in the water sector. And I think part of the problem is that if it's not being talked internally, it's also not being talked necessarily in the press. So I think it was a revelation to people that this even mattered to them. So we talk about operational technology and OT quite a lot, which is an element of cybersecurity and has gone from being a very small part of the cyber world to now a very important part. So, and the operational technology, and we might get Mike to help me with what he thinks the definition is, but it's all of the automated processes and procedures which are operating your infrastructure. So, and the OT language can be used beyond traditional infrastructure into all sorts of areas. So a water example, which is not the normal one here, is like a swimming pool. So if you're controlling the flow of chemicals into your swimming pool and you've got it automated, then you're looking at OT straight away. And so there will be boards of directors and little associations where people have control over what could be life-threatening if that technology gets messed with. And then you scale it up to the water industry, and getting it right and getting it safe is critically important. And now in 2025, increasingly difficult to do.
Yeah, and I think throughout this call, the podcast will talk about OT a lot, and then we'll talk about IT. And I guess IT is probably what people are most familiar with. So information technology, your computers, the networks and systems that sit behind your computers to help you do your business. Whereas operational technology is really that technology that sort of interfaces with the physical world, and often it's performing tasks that would be dangerous for humans to do. They could be really monotonous for humans to do, or just be really, really labor intensive. So instead, this technology's been invented to help with it. What has changed over recent years is that traditionally those operational technology environments have been what we'd call separated. So they would have been standalone by themselves, and then you would have had your IT network, which would never talk to your OT network. And now that's no longer the case, because organizations are looking to be more efficient, and there are some benefits from having your OT network communicate with the IT network, and therefore the outside world and all of the benefits that the internet can bring. But that really also creates this new cybersecurity challenge, which I think is the main thing we want to talk about today.
What are some of those risks? What are some examples of attacks or issues that we've seen in the past to IT or OT?
In New Zealand, we have about 7,000 incidents per year. Look, the vast majority of those are impacting individuals being scammed online, losing some money, that sort of thing. Around 350 of those each year are what we call potentially nationally significant, and that is because they affect an organisation who provides services to a wide range of people. So critical infrastructure, the public sector, banks, so on and so forth. Most of those incidents are around potentially stealing some information from those networks, or making some of those networks unavailable, and then demanding a ransom to make those available. And those are the traditional sort of IT incidents that we see. But if you think about the potential incident in an operational technology environment, somebody could disrupt or manipulate or shut down systems that are managing, say, the wastewater systems, or they could make those systems unavailable to people and therefore demand a ransom to bring it back online for the organization. I guess people listening will understand the impacts of that to the water sector far more than me, but I think we can probably all just predict, if the water wasn't available through one of these, how devastating that would be for a range of people.
Absolutely. And that SCADA reliance, I guess, particularly some of the wastewater treatment plant technologies, is something that is increasing over time as things are getting more complex, and so you can see that becoming more of a threat.
And the reality is that, the gates are open. We can't function well without that really close interaction between the IT people, the OT, and for the water sector and infrastructure, particularly the engineers who have such a pivotal role in keeping everything safe. So I think we recognize the complexity and difficulty of the people who are having to grapple with this.
And I think it's also somewhat consumer driven as well. These organizations are making business decisions, and one example I've been had explained to me before was the fact that I now might want to access and understand the power usage of my home from my mobile phone means that my mobile phone is connecting to something, which is then connecting to something, which at the end of the day needs to connect to that operational technology system to give me that information. And so the fact that people want all that information at their fingertips is sort of driving these organizations to have to introduce some of that new technology that 20 years ago they didn't have to, and that segregation was a relatively good security measure.
So the underpin of everything Mike's just explained is around the importance of trust, and trust in organizations and trust in the companies that supply you. And people have that trust, which is why they let their fridge talk to a supermarket. But of course, in the cyber world, we talk about zero trust all the time. And it's a really interesting one as to how do you reconcile concept of zero trust with the concept of trust that underpins net promoter scores, customer experience, and everything driving marketing. So another silo potentially within our infrastructure companies is the marketing team, who are being driven by something that says we need more data. So it's, again, another difficult dilemma, but one that people just need to start getting their heads around, because we can't fix it if we don't recognize it.
Yeah, and we'll often talk about that security shouldn't stop your business as well. If for your business, it is a good business decision for you and your customers to make that data available, security shouldn't always be just saying no. Security should be more about, okay, we understand that introduced these types of risks. Here's how we could do that safely. Cybersecurity should really be helping your business move forward, because the easy solution to cybersecurity is to pull out the cables and never talk to anyone, and it's done. Turn off the computers and you're cyber secure. But that's just not realistic. So it's more, okay, here's what we want to do. How do we do it with some good controls to do it safely?
So can you give us some examples, maybe from New Zealand and from overseas, around what that good practice looks like and how we can make ourselves more secure without just, throwing the baby out with the bathwater and unplugging everything?
Yeah, sure. And I do find often, people want probably people like me or Jennie to come on here, and we've got these kind of secret solutions to cybersecurity, but it's probably painfully a little bit boring to say. Honestly, most of what we see is if you do some foundational cybersecurity things really well, you'll be protected from the vast majority of threat. And some things that I consider to be in that basics are, first of all, understanding what technology you have, both in the IT and the operational technology. If you can't protect what you don't know you have, and so understanding what you have and how it sort of connects to each other and relies on each other is a good first step. You also want to think about, and Jennie mentioned this already, your supply chain. So it's no longer just the security of what you believe you own and control, because you'll be buying devices or using software or applications from a wide range of companies. And so you really need to start considering them a part of your security. And then the last one that springs to mind is training and investing in your people, whether that be the cybersecurity engineers who are helping to protect your business, or just your everyday users who need to understand when they're receiving emails, not to click on certain links and those sorts of things. So once again, neither of those things are probably groundbreaking concepts, but they are, unfortunately, what we see is normally incidents occur when some basic cybersecurity control hasn't been put in place.
One of the things I think people find very difficult is that when the sort of cyber doors open and they've gone, holy moly, what do I do? Really important that anybody listening in who's joined us today thinks about what their role is and the multiple roles they have, and then how they can do the maximum within the rounds of the role they have. So, for example, as individuals who are employees, we're consultants, we're operating on, we're working with our community associations. We need to do everything we can as individuals to make sure that we're never the cause of the cyber door being opened. And quick plug here for the NCSC. They've got a really good cyber uplift action plan, which we can share with people, which is a really good one for individuals. And it recognizes that we're going to go through a maturity journey, so as individuals. So I would recommend that if people realize and knowing themselves they're not doing enough, it's nice bite-sized pieces to evolve what you're doing. Now, if you're somebody in an organization who has a executive or a management opportunity, responsibility in this space, then there are a whole bunch of tools out there which they need to understand. And then at the board level, if you're a director, whether you're a director of one of the water entities or any other organization, your role is very twofold. One, as individuals, how do you make sure you're doing the best thing? And what we're seeing is some better advice coming from New Zealand, but also from overseas for directors as well, about how to be the high performing director who is contributing to the solution and not being the cause. And we need to be aware of those as directors. But then also as directors, we need to say, are we enabling our security teams that we have, regardless of the size of our organization, to be the experts they are, and not try to tell them what to do when they're the ones who hold the expertise.
Yeah, and I think an important part of that is not being daunted by the subject matter or the content. I have a lot of people who, when I tell them I work in cybersecurity, they're like, whoa, what is cybersecurity? That is something I could never, ever understand. And a little anecdote I like to use, I imagine we've got a lot of New Zealanders listening here. Like, if you understand the rules of rugby, you can understand cybersecurity. At the end of the day, there's some new terms and some new words, and you don't need to be able to code and do all of that. But a lot of the time, these are just terms. You learn what the term means, much like you learn a rule in a sport.
And I would absolutely agree about the not being daunted by it, because I don't have a tech background at all. So when I came into cyber for the first time, it was as a person who spent all my time with words and books and thoughts and ideas. But it is a topic that you can learn and you can master it. In fact, maybe master is going too far, because I'm not sure anybody can master it with the speed it moves. But there's nothing about cyber that we can't learn, and learn how to use it and how to be part of the safety fabric that our organizations need.
I think that's a really important message, isn't it? That it's just not something to be scared of, but something we need to be doing. It's not a case of putting our heads in the sand at all. It's get out there and start on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. A topic that's not been discussed in the cyber world is the scandal in the UK around the post office. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there's been some really interesting reports coming out. It's an appalling scandal. But one of the things that rises to the surface with that is that the directors of the post office had chosen to be tech ignorant, and they'd chosen to ignore signals. And as a result, the recommendations that are starting to come through us are pointing out to people that if you're not prepared to embrace tech, understand tech, work with it, you really need to get off the bus and get out. And I think cyber amplifies the importance of that commitment by everybody to understand what they need to understand. Otherwise, it's all over Red Rover. I don't know if that's a rugby term or not. So
it's interesting in my head though, because that draws such a parallel. Cybersecurity is safety of your the place that you're working. We talk about safety and we talk about the importance of directors and leaders in organizations taking responsibility for safety and the responsibility for training. And really, this is in parallel to that, a different aspect of the business that we need to make sure we're safe in.
Yeah, 100%. We'll often talk about, how do we make cybersecurity more like health and safety, which in New Zealand is, a really well understood concept and something that directors and senior leaders are very conscious of and do a lot of work within their organisation. And I think for the water sector too, cybersecurity or poor cybersecurity could lead to health and safety challenges. We're talking about operational technology. These are machines that are moving the physical world around. So the security of your operational technology environment isn't just good for your business and delivering what you need to do. It can actually keep your staff safe, and I guess for the water sector, the customers of your water, I don't know what they're called in the sector, but the drinkers or the users of that water.
Yeah, interesting time, because back in 2022 when I talked to the Water New Zealand conference, I put health and safety in there as a big chunk of it, because I'd realized that if individuals and organizations are finding some stubbornness, and the people who control the wallets about spending money on cyber, the health and safety conversation around cyber is a really good place to start, because we've had enough years since Pike River for boards to understand how they're not only on the line as organizations but as individuals. And so it is actually a good mechanism to help people get traction if there's stubbornness.
If you were talking to CEOs and board members of organizations, what do you think the key things that they need to be aware of are, and what would you be recommending to them?
Yes, so this morning I was reading the newly published World Economic Forum Cyber Insights report, and there's a shocking statistic of regional differences in cyber resilience. And the answer for Oceania was that no organization said they were not confident about cyber resilience in Oceania, which shows a head in the sand delusion of catastrophic proportions. Only region with nothing on that bar on this chart. So I think the first thing is for boards to realize that we need to be realistic and aware of how resilient our organizations actually are. And the trust between boards and executives becomes that bit more important. The management is where the cyber expertise will sit, or in consultants brought in by management. And so boards need to listen as much as they can to the experts. The UK post office example showed the disastrous effects when boards are too arrogant about their own knowledge. And this is a sector that's growing and they need advice and help. My second piece of advice is stop immediately if you're using your own home email addresses for board-related matters, unless you're at stage 10 of the NCSC maturity scale, and it only goes up to 4. You shouldn't be using your own unprotected email system for work-related stuff. And it's as simple as if you send a document to home to print on your home printer, you're taking it outside of your secure environment and put it elsewhere. Now that means that your personal approach to cyber becomes the organization. So again, have a good hard look about how you operate as a director, and that you're not going to be part of any of the hack processes. Use and understand the frameworks which are out there. So New Zealand has its own frameworks. They're really good. There's good frameworks out of Australia. There's no shortage of good, wise support. Number one thing is for boards and executives to actually listen. which means that giving your cyber team 15 minutes to speak to your board meeting is never going to be enough. Make the time, allow the time. I know at one stage certain companies in the water sector were very proud that all their board papers were 2 pages long. That probably means that if you're getting 2 pages on cyber, you're getting 20 pages too few. And so it's like, yes, we like board meetings to be efficient and all about governance, but if you're not hearing from your experts the amount of information you need, you're going to miss something. And finally, the keep learning, keep listening, keep learning.
Two things sort of jump out to me there, Jenny, and just agreeing how important it is to use a well-known framework. And I think the importance of that is normally these frameworks are a good way to make sure that you're investing in the various elements of cybersecurity. So it's not all about just having good governance. It's not all about just having the best technology. It's not all about just having the most trained staff. It's actually about doing a little bit of all of it, because you don't want to be really strong in one area just to be completely insecure in another. And the second part that we see being really important is organizations having an incident response plan and testing it. So organizations who have thought through what would it look like if we had a cybersecurity incident, and they've actually run that through a workshop or a tabletop exercise, because it means when an incident does occur, you're not spending time sort of understanding, who needs to be involved, who has decision-making rights. You've sort of squared all of that stuff away, and then you can respond to the actual incident. And the reality is, for a lot of people, this might be the only cybersecurity incident they ever deal with. So I think there is a little bit of human comfort in having a piece of paper in front of you that has a rough plan on it. You would have never practiced the exact incident you're in, but at least it takes away some of that complexity and lets you focus where you actually should be.
So actually picking up on your point about paper, when your systems are shut down and you're completely locked out, the dinosaurs who printed out manuals with how to do this and what to do will be the ones you'll be looking to. So again, we make sure we all need to remember not to be so tech savvy that we've forgotten about what happens when the tech stops.
Thanks, Jenny. So on that sort of continued learning piece, where can people go for more information, and what should be those couple of things that people need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so from my perspective, if you're interested in improving sort of your own online security or that of your friends or whānau, you can visit ownyouronline.govt.nz, and that's where we have the self-assessment tool that Jenny has talked about, but also just a lot of good information to how to spot scams, how to protect yourselves, what good passwords look like, all of those basic things. If you're more interested in cybersecurity for your organization, then you can visit ncsc.govt.nz, and that's where we release advisories about emerging trends or threats. So recommend you check that out if you haven't. Also, some people listening might work within the cybersecurity teams of the water sector, so you might know someone who works with me. Feel free to reach out to them, or you can email us at info@ncsc.gov.nz as well.
And I think I would add to that the Australian sites of the sister collaborative agencies in Australia are really good. And because they have critical infrastructure legislation, I often say to people that if you want to know what you need to be doing better, pretend you're an Australian infrastructure provider and look what you have to do by law. New Zealand tends to follow, so we'll get it at some stage. It might take a few years, but it'll come to us too. So I'd say the Australian resource is really good. And for directors, I think the info coming out of the UK IOD is easily accessible and also useful perspectives too.
And my understanding is also that if somebody wanted to reach out and have NCSC come in and talk to them, then that's also an option.
Yeah, definitely feel free to reach out, especially if you're finding that maybe you're struggling to get the importance of cybersecurity raised at your leadership or board level, where we can come in, support you in doing that. And that would be something that, because of the importance of the sector, we'd be happy to do, and we'd do all of that. That's free of charge. It's not a paid service.
Well, thank you, Jennie and Mike, for joining Hannah and myself today. It's great to talk to you about cybersecurity and its potential impact on the water industry. I've certainly learnt a huge amount. Remember, if you want to find more information about cybersecurity and what you can do, there's lots of great free resources on the NCSC website, which is www.ncsc.gov.nz. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this latest episode. We'll be back next month with our next podcast.